Yeah, we back. Now today's going to be a quick video. Today's video is going to be a lesson in international diplomacy, right? These are the lessons that, as young black men, we should have been learning in school as children. But unfortunately, they decided to teach us about Thomas Jefferson and Christopher Columbus instead. So unfortunately, we never received these teachings like we should have. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about the diplomatic, incident that has occurred between the United States government and the military government in Mali, the administration of President Assimi Goïta. Now, I think this topic is excellent because we can analyze it from several different angles. But before we get into it, let's start back from a couple weeks ago, right? So the United States Embassy in Mali put out a press release saying this: the United States will implement a visa bond for Malian travelers, right? And basically what they said was, in simple terms, if you're a Malian citizen applying for a U.S. visa, you have to put down, up to $10,000 as a deposit because, for whatever reason they feel. You might have too many people overstaying the visa, or to be honest, as a sovereign country, they could just put you on the list because they have a right to do that. They could do whatever they want. They don't even really need a reason. Now, what we do know is that Trump's immigration policy is geared towards boosting the white population. He has not shied away from that. He has made that very clear on the campaign trail and those around him in his administration, guys like Stephen Miller, Elon Musk, and guys like that, these ethno-nationalists, Christian nationalists, white supremacists, right? They've made it very clear they prefer white nationals to come into the country, right? That's why you see him opening the doors to populations like the white South Africans. And that's why you see headlines coming out in the recent weeks. Take a look up on the screen. Trump considers an overhaul of the refugee system that would favor white nationals, right? Take a look at this headline. A couple days ago, Trump's refugee policy will make America white again, right? So Trump doesn't want immigrants from nations like, Haiti, nations like Nigeria, nations like Mali, all them dark-skinned people. No. When it comes to Trump and his administration, they prefer immigrants from, Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, France, the white South Africans, Denmark, Sweden, even the Czech Republic, as long as you white, right? As long as you white, it's all right, right? But, dark-skinned folks from Mali and things like that, nah, you got to stay in your country, right? That's the policy of the Trump administration. And to enforce that, they put things like visa bonds and visa deposits on the books to basically discourage movement or travel from certain nations while they open the doors to other nations, right? And like I said, a sovereign nation has the right to do that. Sovereign nations have the freedom and liberty to do whatever they want to do and put whatever law they want on the books. So Trump is prioritizing, his white folks, right? It is what it is. So in response to that, the Malian government in the law, following the law of reciprocity, also put a visa deposit on the books as well, right? I believe the Trump administration put like $10,000 visa deposit for Malian citizens. The Malian government came back and put the same exact amount, $10,000 visa bond. Take a look up on the screen. Like 12 days ago, Mali retaliates against the United States, requiring visa applicants to post a $10,000 bond, right? So same thing. Like I said, the law of reciprocity, you require $10,000 visa deposit. That's fine. Whenever your contractors or your NGO workers or your journalists, the missionaries, the researchers, the political analysts, even the embassy support staff, or even private citizens or expats, and also individuals who claim to be, international consultants, they'll all have to come up with $10,000 each, right? Now, imagine if you have a media company or a publication like the Washington Post, and they want to send, a crew out to Mali, because they're covering a story. And let's say they're traveling with a crew of like 4 people, right? The journalist, the cameraman, and, the rest of the crew and the staff, right? You're going to have to come up with at least 40,000 off the rip, right? Before anything, you got to come up with 40,000. So now that might not be, financially sound. So now the Western media publications might not have access to the country. It might not be economically worth it to send out a crew, to cover stories or, do interviews or conduct research. It just might not make financial sense anymore to do that. So now that in itself is going to be a blow to the Western media propaganda machine because they're not going to be able to get firsthand information or shape the narrative how they wish. And that's just one example. So in response to that, less than 2 weeks later, take a look up on the screen. The United States State Department removes Mali from the visa bond requirement list as of October 23rd. Yes, as you can see, in less than 2 weeks, they reversed the ruling in terms of the visa deposits. Now, what are some reasons why the United States might have backed off or capitulated in response to the action taken by His Excellency, the Honorable President Assimi Goïta? Well, I already mentioned the fact that it's a diplomatic mess because those who travel to the country are going to have to come up with major sums of money just for basic trips. But besides that, currently right now, not only France, but just the Western nations in general are fighting an information war on the continent, right? Their credibility on the continent is very shaky right now. Their credibility, to be honest, is in the dirt. They have no credibility on the continent. And not only do they have no credibility, but they're losing influence very fast, right? In terms of the relationships that, the Western nations used to enjoy on the continent just 10 years ago, things have changed rapidly on the geopolitical international landscape. Keep in mind, the United States government had a $100 million drone base in the Sahel just 2 years ago, and they got kicked out the country, right? One of their largest international investments in terms of military spending, and they lost it all. They got kicked out the country. You remember back in early 2024, take a look up on the screen. Niger declares the American military presence illegal and kicks out the United States troops. Take a look at this headline. The United States is set to evacuate their illegal troops from Niger. Their illegal troops. Well, as you can see, right, in terms of Western dominance and hegemony on the continent, it's been very unstable in recent years, right? It's been very shaky, and France has been suffering the brunt of it, but the United States has also been suffering some, peripheral or residual effects alongside France as well. So by taking this action, right, putting a $10,000 visa deposit on Malian citizens, that pretty much reinforces the propaganda war, the information war that's been being waged against you, because when they do that, the United States makes themselves look like the big evil colonists, right? The big evil imperialists that we claim that they are. And by doing that, they confirm what we've been saying. And by we, I'm talking about, the Pan-Africanist, journalists and independent voices in the media, right? So the United States, alongside France and many Western nations, are actually trying to repair the relationship on the continent. They're actually trying to mend those relationships. They're actually trying to, rebrand their image, repair their image in the eyes of the Africans, because they know it's the Africans that currently hold the precious metals, the critical minerals that's going to power up the next century. So if they don't have, solid relationships with African countries, they're going to, fall by the wayside and be irrelevant geopolitically, right? If you do not have positive relationships with African nations going into the future, you have no future. And the United States knows that. That's why we have massive leverage on the geopolitical scale. That's why as soon as Niger kicked the French multinationals out the country, the company immediately started nosediving and going bankrupt. They had to get damn near 300 million euros from the French government in order to stay afloat and pay the salaries of their employees. And just to confirm what I'm saying, I'm going to play a clip from Celeste Wallander, a former United States diplomat in the arena of security and international relations, and also Ted Cruz.
Africa is not merely important, it is essential. Africa is not merely important, it is essential. Africa is not merely important, it is essential. African partnerships are critical for the Department of Defense to maintain its technological edge, accomplish its geopolitical and strategic objectives, and power our futures.
And on the importance of strengthening U.S.-Africa partnerships to secure the United States supply chain of critical minerals.
All right, we back. So like I said, due to the fact that President Assimi Goïta employed the law of reciprocity, right? You put a $10,000 visa deposit, I return the favor, right? The same thing. That becomes a major headache when you got to come up with $10,000 for every person on your staff, every person on your team to travel to Mali for whatever reason, especially if you got to take multiple trips out of the year. They probably weighed up the positives and the negatives, and they probably realized, man, it's probably best if we take them off the list. And also keep in mind that the United States is also engaged in a competition against other powers like Russia and China. So when you put a $10,000 visa on Malian citizens, and they return the favor, that simply is going to force the Malian government to diversify their relationships and seek partnerships with other countries, seek partnerships elsewhere, right? With less hostile nations that are not going to put a $10,000 visa deposit on my citizens, right? And by doing that, you actually further destroy your influence in the region. And I'm sure the Trump administration, right, his advisors probably did the calculations and realized that it's not worth it to keep them on the list. Is it worth further losing our influence in Africa just by keeping them on the list, right? When you look at how many Malians even come to the United States, it's such a tiny amount. It's like less than 5,000. And when you look at the groups of people that migrate to the United States in the largest numbers, it's really the Mexicans, the Indians, the Chinese, the Filipinos, the Cubans, the Vietnamese, the Colombians, the Guatemalans. The Africans are not even at the top 10, top 15 of the list, right? Black immigrants don't be coming to the United States like that. I know a lot of folks make a lot of noise about the black immigrants, and recently we had, the Canal Street federal operation by ICE. But when you look at the numbers, African immigrants, black immigrants from different countries are not coming to the United States in large numbers. They're simply not. So when you hear certain people even say things like, little slick shit like, oh, you flee in your country, and you look at the numbers and you realize that there's barely any black immigrants even coming to the country at all, you realize you're talking to somebody who's simply regurgitating bullshit they heard from somebody else. You're not talking to a serious intellectual person. So that's probably another reason why they took Mali off the list, because they looked at the numbers and realized, are we really going to gamble and lose even further influence on the continent just to, keep out like a few thousand Malians, right? That's how many Malians apply for a visa every year. A few thousand, right? The numbers it's totally insignificant. But the reality is the reason why Trump put Mali on the list in the first place is because Trump, he's simply trying to posture for his base, right? He's trying to make himself seem like, man, I'm tough on the migrants. I'm tough on the border. I'm tough, protecting our national territory, right? So, but the thing is, though, you cannot take that energy into the international stage, right? It's one thing to project that image inside the United States, right? Inside the United States, Donald Trump has to project an image of I'm America first, build the wall, kick out the illegals, make the country great again, things like that. But on the international stage, you have to be way more respectful. You cannot operate like that on the international stage because the black man has the leverage on the international stage. You could talk to the black man crazy inside the United States, but on the international stage, you got to watch your mouth when you're talking to the black man. You saw what we did to Orano, the French multinational uranium company. We bankrupted that entire company. That company damn near went bankrupt in less than a year. They had to get a $300 million injection from the government within 6 months of losing access to the uranium in Niger. That's how fast the company began to crumble. That's the leverage the black man has on the international stage. We have the power to bankrupt multi-billion-dollar companies without firing a single shot. So like I said, it's easy for Trump to project that image, back at home domestically. I'm tough on the illegals. I'm tough on the migrants. But internationally, no, it's going to be some consequences for that, right? And in fact, that is exactly how they lost their military base in Niger. They lost that drone base because the envoys they sent in that meeting, they were talking crazy. They were talking reckless in the meeting. And at the end, they say, you know what? Just pack up your military base and get the hell out the country. How about that? How about that? You want to talk crazy? Get out the country. And they had to pack up their stuff and go. So like I said, when it comes to international affairs, they got to be extra respectful, right? They got to move with caution. They can't beat on their chest and talk stupid. No, we're going to put you in check. We're going to put you in your place, right? It's going to be some heavy consequences that you're going to be paying. And that's the reality. That's the reality. It's the law of reciprocity. That's how you get your respect out here. The law of reciprocity. And that's what they don't expect. They don't really expect you to treat them how they treat you. They expect you to turn the other cheek, right? So if they slap you, they expect you to be the bigger man, right? Be the bigger man and just, turn the other cheek and walk away. No, they don't expect you to come back around and return the favor. They don't expect that at all. But when it comes to President Assimi Goïta, they should have already known what time it was, right? We already saw what he did to the, the gold mining executives, especially when it came to Barrick Gold. Take a look up on the screen. Last October, Mali says Barrick Gold owes $500 million in taxes. Now, keep in mind, Barrick Gold, the second largest gold mining company on the planet, right? And then after that, Mali issues an arrest warrant for the CEO of Barrick Gold, right? Then after that, Barrick Gold suspends operations in Mali after a $245 million gold seizure, right? So the government went and confiscated hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gold. Now, take a look up on the screen. Last week, a few days ago, Barrick's Mali gold mine resumes operations under state control, right? So now the government has taken over the gold mine in totality. So like I said, man, it's different when the Pan-Africanist black man is in power. They're not accustomed to dealing with the Pan-Africanist black man. The Pan-Africanist black man, he's not cooperative, he's stubborn. He does whatever is in his best interest and not your best interest. So they're not accustomed to dealing with this archetype. They don't like dealing with this archetype, because he gives them a hard time. The Pan-Africanist black male archetype, they don't like when he's in power. They start losing money. They start losing influence. It's all bad, right? It's all bad. But anyways, recently I saw that the foreign-backed mercenaries, also known as terrorists and jihadists, have changed their tactics as of late. Take a look up on the screen. Al-Qaeda jihadist groups are targeting fuel convoys in Mali, right? Now, when I see things like this taking place, Al-Qaeda linked groups trying to topple the regime in Mali, it reminds me of what took place in Syria, for example, right? Take a look up on the screen. As you can see, this is the current leader in Syria. He was formerly known as Mohammed al-Jolani, but he is now known as Ahmad al-Sharaa. He changed his name. And as you can see, he's with President Macron. And as you can see, he's with President Donald Trump. But back in the day, not even back in the day, but in recent history, he was actually an international terrorist, a war criminal with a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States government. He had posters plastered all over the world. Stop this terrorist. Stop this terrorist. He was linked to Al-Qaeda, right? But then when the guy in Syria got overthrown, the guy who I guess was an enemy of the West, he wasn't cooperative with the West, and then he became the leader. You saw that he was instantly embraced by all the Western capitals, all the Western governments, you know, Macron, Trump, and everybody else quickly embraced him as the new leader in Syria. And when I see Al-Qaeda linked groups doing things like attacking the fuel convoys in Mali and trying to topple the regime and destabilize the regime, I see a similar playbook and similar tactics being deployed against the regime of President Assimi Goïta. I believe that these same exact terrorist groups that we see now, you'll see all these international leaders embrace the terrorists as diplomats and heads of state, the same way they did for the terrorists in Syria who took power and toppled the government, and now he's taking photos in France with Emmanuel Macron. I think the same playbook is being deployed against President Assimi Goïta, 100%. Now, of course, if you ask the terrorists, they'll claim they're doing it for, oh man, we're doing it because of Allah. We're doing it for religious and spiritual reasons. But why would you be doing it for religious and spiritual reasons? Because don't you know when you put a blockade on the fuel, don't you know that it's your fellow Muslims that are going to suffer, right? Because the majority of the population in Mali is Muslim. So if you're a Muslim, why would you be attacking other Muslims? I thought when it came to Islam, it was about protecting life and protecting property and protecting the community. Why would you be causing calamity in the community and causing civilians to suffer and making life harder, right? You're a fake Muslim. You're a mercenary in the pay of some white men from the West. You're a coward. And that's why every time I see a dead bodies on the internet, I celebrate. Because y'all nothing but a bunch of puppets, a bunch of mercenaries in the pay of foreign states doing the bidding of external actors. And that's a fact. But anyways, you know, in summary, it's all about the law of reciprocity. It's all about, listen, if you do something to me, I'm going to come right back and do it to you. It's just like when I come and I debunk the conservatives, when the conservatives put out some false propaganda and I respond and I expose the criminality happening in their community. They don't really expect the black man to engage in reciprocity, right? They expect the black man to turn the other cheek and be the bigger man and take the high road. They don't expect the black man, if you smack him across the face, he gonna turn around and give you the open hand slap right back. They get surprised, they get confused when the black man engages, you know, in manhood, you know, and stands on business as he's supposed to. But listen, that's the law of reciprocity, baby. That's how we come in. President Assimi Goïta said, listen, 10 bands for the visa, that's fine. 10 bands for the visa. Reciprocity, right? Retaliation. Yeah. And before we close out, I want to give a shout out to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Mali, right? You know, the brother always been hard at work, Minister Abdoulaye Diop. You know, we got to give a shout out to the Minister of Foreign Affairs because he is the one that represents the nation on the international stage. He's the one that interfaces with foreign governments and signs bilateral agreements, right? He's the one that responds when the United States puts, you know, $10,000 visa deposits on the citizens. He's the one that, you know, responds and say, you know what, listen, $10,000 for the visa in response, in retaliation, reciprocity, right? So he sets the tone for how the nation engages with the rest of the world, right? So I always see the brother, you know, right next to the President Assimi Goïta. Got to give a shout out to Big Bro, Minister Abdoulaye Diop, always hard at work, always doing what he's supposed to do. Shout out to you, Big Bro. Got love for you. You know, anyway, it's your boy Nefakari the Salim back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. Second single off the next project, The Spy in Bamako. Ironic, Spy in Bamako. Yeah. Anyway, pin comment at the top. Subscribe to the Patreon, NTD1814, and I'm gone. Peace.
Feel like it's see me, I feel like I'm Saudi or ran up on Yan in the middle of Bamako. Enemy line, they claiming he innocent. Don't do no talking, I gotta move militant. Don't do no talking, I hit him with facts. 1804, bringing it back. 1804 like I'm Mother Cap Henry. King with the vision, the crown never empty. Top of the mountain, my soldiers defend me. Ducking and dodging the foreign intelligence. Hitting my dance on the DGSE. Dodging they traps, still on my feet. Feeling impeccable, feel like I'm shining. Go to my neck and I'm flooded with diamonds. Go to my neck and I feel like a mess. Feel like a lion, I'm in the savannah. Feel like the king when I'm up in the jungle. Never defeated, I never been humble. Come out victorious every encounter. Money machine give me help when I count it. Money machine stack it up in a beat. Heart of a king and I ride for the team. Weight of the world got it stuck on my shoulders. Bet you can feel it, my heart getting colder. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots, I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try, but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison. Hoping they wish we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous, turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she precious. fresh. Hop in the whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in the whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater. Yeah, gotta stay focused so when it's in shots, I gotta react. Cause I'm a target, I'm under attack. Grabbing a weapon, I tell her get back. Mission exposed, secrets unfold. Enemy try, but I'm still in control. Got your boy sitting in Bamako prison, hoping and wishing we sending them home. Enemy know that we good under pressure. Been through the thunderous, turbulent storm. Shorty a diamond, I told her she pressure. Hop in the whip and I'm taking her home. Hop in the whip and I'm swerving, I'm smashed. Killing my enemies, one of my passion. Rocking this gold like we in bikini. Feel like the captain, I'm clutching a heater.